The NFL draft took place last week, and I want to talk about the quarterbacks because what we have been witnessing since 2016, 2017 is the new era of quarterbacks in the NFL. And there have been so many quarterbacks that we have seen that have already accomplished so much in the league, in their short time in the league so far, and others that have amazing potential, and we've seen others that are looking to bounce back in 2021. I mean, just think of the quarterbacks that we've witnessed over these last few seasons. Mahomes, Watson, Jackson, Allen, Mayfield, Herbert, Tagovailoa, Darnold. Even though Darnold hasn't been productive with the Jets, I think that a new start for Darnold in Carolina, I think we're going to see him improve in 2021. And we've seen quarterbacks like Rivers and Breeze retire in the offseason. And we have other quarterbacks such as Rodgers, Brady, and Ryan that I think are getting close to that time where it is time to hang it up and retire. So what today's video is about which quarterbacks I think have the best potential to be successful in the National Football League. Because I wanted to do a video like this before the draft took place, but I thought in my mind that it wasn't the smartest thing to do because despite the obvious being Lawrence going to Jacksonville and Wilson to the Jets, I just felt like after that it was pretty difficult to guess or to rank these quarterbacks because we would have no idea where they'd get drafted. So to recap the draft as far as the quarterbacks are concerned, we had 10 quarterbacks get drafted in last week's NFL draft. Trevor Lawrence, Zach Wilson, Trey Lance, Justin Fields, Mac Jones, Kyle Trask, Kellen Monde, Davis Mills, Ian Book, and Sam Ellinger. So my predictions as far as when these quarterbacks are going to be starting in the league. Now, Trevor Lawrence, in my mind, is going to be a starter week 1. And I know that there are some that think that, well, this is a quarterback competition between Lawrence and Minshew. And let's just face the facts. Lawrence is going to start week 1. Urban Meyer came out of retirement to coach Trevor Lawrence. So there's no way that Lawrence isn't getting to start week 1. Zach Wilson, I'd say with the quarterbacks on the depth chart for the Jets, he's starting week 1. Now this is where it gets interesting here because the other 3 quarterbacks that were taken in round 1, I don't think that they're going to be week 1 starters. And I want to start with Trey Lance here. Trey Lance, I think he'll get his opportunity in 2022 at, I think, the earliest, assuming that Jimmy Garoppolo stays healthy. But I think he can also start in the middle of the 2021 season because the 49ers, as much as I think that Jimmy Garoppolo is underappreciated with the 49ers, I think that Garoppolo's injury history was a big concern when looking at this NFL draft. Because I think the fact they moved up from 12 to 3, I think it expresses that the 49ers, they're very concerned with the injury history of Garoppolo. So I think if Garoppolo were to get injured again, I would say that Lance would take over as a starting quarterback. And in my mind, I'll get to this later as far as ranking these quarterbacks on their potential to succeed. But Lance is in one of the best positions to succeed. And a little spoiler for later on in the video, I think Trey Lance is in the best position to succeed mainly because of the system that he is in with Kyle Shanahan being one of the best offensive minds in the National Football League. Justin Fields, I think he's going to start pretty early on in the 2021 season. I think that Andy Dalton will get the start in week 1. I think if Andy Dalton were to struggle early on in the season, then I'd say they're going to put in Justin Fields. I think it's going to be one of those situations where we saw last season with Trubisky struggling early on in the season, and they put in Nick Foles, and then the Bears got on a hot streak a bit, and then the Bears they just started to decline a bit, and then the later on the season went, they seemed to get better, but then they played the Packers week 17, and that was their reality check, and then they unfortunately lost in the wild card to New Orleans. So I think we might see one of those situations here, because this was a desperation move by the Bears front office, because they know that their jobs are on the line, and when you have the opportunity to take Justin Fields when he is starting to fall, when Fields was projected as high as the second overall pick, only behind Lawrence, you got to take a chance. It's a make or break move for this organization. So I think Fields starts pretty early on in 2021, and Mac Jones, I think, will possibly start early on as well this upcoming season, especially if we see Cam Newton start to struggle early on in the year. Because Cam Newton, he did not do so well last year. In fact, it was the worst season of Cam Newton's career. I know that last season was 2020, and with all the circumstances that went on, and I think Mac Jones is going to be the starter at least going into 2022. He should be QB1 because the Cam Newton contract is only a one-year deal for a reason. So I think Mac Jones starts early on in 2021. Kyle Trask, I'm going to say maybe 2023, depending on when Tom Brady retires. Kellen Monde. Now, this is a bold prediction here, but I think Kellen Monde is going to be the starting quarterback for the Vikings at some point in 2021. Because if we see Kirk Cousins struggle early on in the season, because Kirk Cousins did struggle early on in 2020, but then he started to get better the later on the season went. But I think I wouldn't be surprised if we saw Kellen Monde as a starter going into 2021. And going back to Kyle Trask real quick, I think maybe if we see the Buccaneers, if they were to clinch the first round bye early on in the season, like the final week of the season, maybe we might see Kyle Trask start that final game of the regular season to see what he's made of, just kind of see what they have going into the future. Then they might do that as well. Now, this one it's kind of hard to predict here. Davis Mills, drafted by the Texans in the third round. Now, the way that I see this draft pick in Davis Mills, I feel like the Texans are unsure how this Deshaun Watson situation is going to play out. I think the fact they drafted him with their first pick in the draft, which is all the way back in the third round, the fact that they took a quarterback here, Davis Mills, I think it shows that maybe they're not 100% confident that Deshaun Watson is going to be on the Texans going into the 2021 season. Whether if they find someone that will trade Deshaun Watson to, or if Deshaun Watson gets suspended by the league. I just feel like that he could either be starting week 1, or it could be in the middle of 2021, or if he's going to just be a career backup at this point. Because if Watson, if nothing happens with the situation that is surrounding him right now, then, and the Texans front office has said Deshaun Watson is our guy going into 2021, maybe he's just a career backup. Although, if the season were to start right now, I would say that Watson wouldn't be on the Texans, because I just don't think the Texans would even want to play Deshaun Watson right now with what's going on and the allegations against him. So I would say it'd be Tyrod Taylor being QB1, and then Davis Mills the backup. So Davis Mills, I think it's very tough to predict when and if he will start. Now, Ian Book, I think maybe could start for the Saints maybe in 2022, because Jameis Winston's contract only has 1 year on it. And the Saints did give a big contract to Taysom Hill. So either I think he could start maybe 2022, or if he's just going to be a career backup at this point, or if we see the Saints struggle this season and they get a high draft pick, then maybe they will draft one of the quarterbacks in next year's draft class, like Spencer Rattler or Sam Howell or Keaton Slovis, Bryce Petty, or Brock Purdy, or even a quarterback that will have a breakout season in 2021 in college football, kind of like the Texans as well. If the Texans were to struggle early on, well, I think the Texans honestly are going to have a high draft pick in next year's draft anyway. So maybe they're looking for one of the top quarterbacks in next year's draft class. And finally, we have Sam Ellinger. And Sam Ellinger, I feel like he's a career backup at this point. And I just think that the fact that they drafted him this late in the draft, the fact he was taken this late, I think that the Colts, they just assume that he'll be a career backup at this point. Because the Colts also drafted Jacob Eason pretty recently. So I'm thinking that Ellinger is probably going to be possibly the backup to Carson Wentz, and they'll probably move Jacob Eason. So it's really hard to say at this point. But I'm going to get into the quarterbacks that I think they have the best potential to succeed, and then I'll get into who I think is going to have the most success as far as their career is concerned. So, the most potential to succeed in my mind is Trey Lance. And I said earlier, the system that he's in San Francisco, Kyle Shanahan being a great offensive mind, one of the best offensive minds in the NFL. Then second is Mac Jones, Bill Belichick, one of the greatest coaches of all time, if not the greatest coach of all time. And I think that Mac Jones, he might remind Bill Belichick of Tom Brady a bit. You never know. Then the third, as far as who can succeed the most in the third position, I'd say Kyle Trask. And I know he's not going to start right away, but he'll get to watch and observe Tom Brady for probably a year or two. And then once he's ready, they're going to hand him the keys to the franchise, become that franchise QB. And I think he's going to take advantage of learning from Tom Brady. So I think Kyle Trask is third. Fourth, I think, is Trevor Lawrence. And the one concern is Urban Meyer never coaching the NFL before. Because we have had that history of college coaches not being able to pan out in the NFL. So the reason why Lawrence is fourth and not first or second or third is for that reason. Plus the fact that Bruce Arians is with the Bucs, and Bruce Arians is also a great QB mentor as well. So that's why Lawrence is fourth. Fifth, I think, is Kellen Monde. And Kellen Monde, I think, he has some potential. I know Kellen Monde wasn't the best quarterback in this draft class. And I know that nobody really talked about Kellen Monde going into this draft, but he had a really good season in 2020 at Texas A&M. It just took him a while to understand Jimbo Fisher's playbook. So I think if Kellen Monde starts at the right time and he has the right supporting cast around him, I think he'd be successful. Then sixth is Justin Fields, and a lot of people say that Fields is the best quarterback in this draft, not named Trevor Lawrence. And there are some that say that Justin Fields is the best quarterback in this draft class. But I personally think that the history that Chicago has with ruining quarterbacks, that's why Fields is so low on this list. That's why he's towards the bottom. As why Zach Wilson is towards the bottom of this list as well. Why he's below guys like Monde and Trask. The Jets, they just have a history of ruining quarterbacks because the Jets have had a good quarterback since Broadway Joe, in my opinion. I mean, Mark Sanchez led them to 2 AFC championship game appearances, but that's honestly saying something about your franchise. And the lack of quarterbacks in your franchise history, if your best quarterback in recent memory was Mark Sanchez, That's just saying something about your franchise and what you're doing with quarterbacks. 8th, Ian Book. And the thing with Ian Book is it's questionable if he's ever going to be a starter or just a career backup, as is Davis Mills at 9. And Davis Mills is at 9 mainly because of the Texans front office, because the Texans are one of, if not the most dysfunctional and incompetent franchises in the NFL. And then rounding out the 10 quarterbacks, 10th is Sam Ellinger. And I think it's basically that I think that he just won't start ever unless, as far as he needs to come in for a Carson Wentz injury or something like that. That's the only time I would see him being the starter, if he just needed to step up for an injured Carson Wentz. So here's who I think will be the most successful quarterback in this draft class. Now, the list that I did with 1 to 10 as far as potential to succeed, that doesn't mean anything. That's just basically off the analysis of where they got drafted to. So, honestly, I might have to turn off the comment section for this one. But I actually think the best quarterback that's going to have the most success in this draft class is, believe it or not, Kellen Monde. So you could say that I'm thinking outside the box on this one. But I am going to go bold here and say that Kellen Monde is going to have the best career out of all the quarterbacks that were drafted in 2021. Mainly because when we look at the best quarterbacks to succeed, we always look at the ones that were drafted in the first round. Well, I didn't want to do that. I think Kellen Monde, Kyle Trask, those two are going to have the most success out of all these quarterbacks that were drafted. And as far as the ones that were drafted in the first round, I think the ones that will have the most success are Lance and Mac Jones. And what sticks out to me about these 4 quarterbacks in particular, Trask, Monde, Lance, and Jones, those 4 quarterbacks, they have got pieces there already for them to succeed, which is a lot why Patrick Mahomes was able to have such an easy time with that Chiefs offense, was because he had the pieces that were set up for him to succeed. He had those pieces for him already. And in my mind, Kellen Monde has that when he takes over the Vikings, because Kirk Cousins only has 1 year left on his contract. He's got weapons like Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen, great running game of Dalvin Cook, and the Vikings, they're improving their offensive line, and their defense is going to get more experienced. And for Trask, he's got the Buccaneers, as they're bringing back every starter from last year's Super Bowl champion team. And Lance, he's got the system with Kyle Shanahan. And Mac Jones, he has got Bill Belichick, and he's got the Patriots. So those are the 4 quarterbacks that I think will really succeed out of all these 10 that were drafted. So tell me your thoughts down below, like, share, and subscribe, and I will talk to you next time.